Another fascinating group of reptiles that make Australia home are the geckos. We have over 115 species. Probably the most popular and commonly kept variety are the knobtails. There are 9 species, with the Centralian knobtail being the largest. In fact, it is the most massive or heaviest of all Australian geckos. Western Australia has some interesting knobtails, including Nephorus pilbarensis and Nephorus wheeleri. I drove out into the Pilbara Ranges with licensed reptile collector Dave McIntosh to see if we could find them. It wasn't long before we spotted a Nephorus pilbarensis crossing the road. Interestingly, this specimen began wiggling its knob tail. All Nephorus tend to wiggle their tails in this way, and while it is not entirely accepted that this is an example of caudal luring, I cannot imagine any other purpose for such an appendage. Several hours later, we were rewarded with a beautiful Nephorus wheeleri also crossing the road.
Is that a gecko on the road there up there? It is too, looks like a little knobtail. It blends in well. Trying to run him over. Let's jump out and have a look. Yeah, that's what he is, in the first wheeleri. Beautiful. Hey fella. Now that is one gecko I'd love to keep. One day perhaps.
In these racks here I keep some of my Nephorus species. Nephorus species are your knobtail geckos. A very good group of geckos to keep. Very easy to look after. They don't have particularly high requirements. This individual here is Nephorus levis. They are probably the most common of all the Nephorus group in captivity. They're the easiest to look after. They're a very good beginner species. They require no UV light. From a heating point of view, as long as they're maintained somewhere around about the 26 to 28 degrees, they're usually quite happy. They are a burrowing species, so they do like to have a container with either deep sand in it or some sort of moist hide box that they can burrow into. So these are your larger rough knobtails. Nephorus amii, they're quite a sizable gecko, probably one of the easier ones to keep, but very popular at the moment. Okay, so this is another pair of Nephorus levis. Males are invariably smaller than females. That's about sort of average difference in size between them. They come in a range of colours, as you can see, reds, yellows, various shades of pink, and they can certainly be line bred to those particular different colours. So I'll just turn these guys over the sexing side of things. Okay, smaller animal is the male. You can see the hemipenal bulge at the base of the tail there, whereas in the bigger one, the female, that's not present. So you see you've just got a very small bulge there. Females are mostly larger than males in this particular species. Okay, this is Nephorus wheeleri, the banded knobtail gecko. These guys are still relatively rare in captivity and are certainly the most expensive of the group. However, they're not the most difficult ones to keep. In terms of suitability for keeping, Nephorus levis and Nephorus amii are by far your most suitable. Wheeleri and Nephorus asper, two of your rough species, are probably next in line, whilst your remaining species that are available, Levissimus and Stellatus, are a little bit fiddly and probably more suitable for the experienced keeper rather than the beginner. So this wheeleri here, she's actually gravid at the moment. You can see the egg just here on the side, and the second one's just visible on the opposite side there. So she'll be expected to lay in the next week or so.
Wheeleri eggs should be incubated at 30 degrees Celsius, and after about 2 months they will hatch. Baby wheeleri are quite dark in colour, but they will lighten up within a day. Tail wiggling has been noted in hatchlings only a few hours old and will increase in the presence of food. They can be started on baby crickets, which they will readily catch. Sand flicking is another behaviour that begins early. This has most likely evolved as a means of camouflage.
Nobody knows the purpose of the knobtail gecko's knob. They do wiggle it when feeding, but they don't tend to use it as a lure or anything like that. But all of the species have it. Not all species have an actual tail, but your rough knobtail geckos just basically have the knob sitting on the base of the pelvis. So this female here, she's actually lost her tail at some stage, so she's growing it back. She's actually skin shedding her tail at the moment. But regrown tails tend to have no knob on them and no particular pattern at all. So these are your giant cave gecko, Pseudothecodactylus lindneri. Probably one of the most aggressive gecko species that we've got access to. They have a tendency to just spontaneously erupt one day and beat up their spouse, but the rest of the time they're quite pleasant. Intermittent breeders, unlike a lot of the others, you'll only get 2, maybe 3 clutches a year out of most females. They're certainly a challenging one to breed. At the moment they're looking quite dull, the lights have just come on, but normally they're a nice bright yellow colour. Don't bite me, please. Here's another giant cave gecko female. She's actually gravid as present. You can see the 2 eggs just there. She'll lay somewhere in the next week or so. We've started doing little test digs in her burrows at the moment. Yeah, quite a pleasant species. Here you go. Okay, these are Burton's legless lizards, one of your pygopod family. Very variable in colour. They can be ranges of browns, reds, silver greys. Here's a silvery coloured animal. So they're quite unique amongst the legless lizards in that they're specialist lizard feeders. So they normally consume skinks, geckos, small dragons, sometimes even small snakes. Some people have been able to get them to feed on pinky mice, but it takes quite a lot of patience to achieve that. Other than that, they're a very placid species. Despite the fact that they are a lizard eater, they tend to not be aggressive towards each other and can be kept in small groups quite well. In captivity, we tend to feed them 1 medium-sized skink or gecko per animal per week, and that's quite a good maintenance diet for them. And they usually grab their mid-body, suffocate them, and then spin them around and consume them head first. They have these long pointed snouts, and they have a detachable jaw much like a snake, so they can consume a lizard anything up to half their body length quite easily. These are egg-laying species. Like most of your legless lizards and geckos, 2 eggs per clutch, and usually these guys only breed once per year. And overall a very interesting species, and yeah, quite a nice species to keep. So this little specimen here is a Pygopus schraderi. It's one of the scalyfoot family, and it's one of the second largest of the group. So very snake-like in general appearance, but if we can just sit still, just down here we can see his little leg flaps, which is why they're called flap-footed lizards. And just underneath that flap you can actually see a tiny little spur, little shiny spur, which indicates that this is a male. In addition to looking snake-like, the major difference they've got there is also, if you have a look at the tongue when it pokes out, it's a broad fleshy tongue, not a typical pointed tongue. And they also have ear openings like a lizard, whereas a snake doesn't have any ear openings at all.